Hey guys, this is D Reaper, and I think it's about time that we have a discussion. Today we are going to talk about Boruto. So, Boruto is pretty bad. Yeah, revolutionary, right? If you've been around, then you know that Boruto has a pretty bad reputation. In my opinion, that is warranted. I've heard a lot of people try and give excuses about Boruto, why it's not as bad as people might think. And I'm gonna have to respectfully disagree. I know I'm not the only one out there who has a big issue with Boruto, the direction it's going, the choices that they've made, and how they've deviated from the Naruto storyline. So today I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to discuss why it's so bad and actually speak on how it could be better, or dare I say even good. But first, let's go over a couple of rules. I'm talking about the anime only. I haven't read the manga, nor do I have any plans to do that. Second, I do watch it in dub, so we're gonna go off that. And yes, you guys can grill me in the comment section. Last, I've not actually caught up with the latest episodes of Boruto. I think I got about 80 plus in, and we'll just go from there. I'm gonna be using broad strokes. Now, let me go ahead and jump ahead of myself, because I know there's at least one person watching who's saying, "But Reaper, Boruto doesn't get good until episode 120. You're not even giving it a chance." And to that I say in the most respectful way possible, I don't care. Listen, if you're recommending I read a book that's 2/3 trash, but you want me to keep reading because it ends up being pretty good in that last part, the honest truth is that's not something I'm interested in taking part of. And this is the same logic I apply to any form of my entertainment, whether it be TV shows, movies, books, or video games. But with all that aside, we've got a lot to cover, so let's go ahead and jump into it. First off, we're going to have to do something that's kind of taboo in the Boruto community. Comparing Boruto and Naruto. Now, this is something that the Boruto community claims isn't fair, but I'm going to argue that it's not only fair but expected. We can't really talk about Boruto without discussing Naruto. The reason being, Boruto is a direct sequel to Naruto. It carries the original story forward. Using Naruto, we have the rule setting and expectation of the world of Naruto, and that's the way it should be. We can look at another example, Avatar, The Legend of Korra, as an example. So, Korra is a sequel to Avatar The Last Airbender. When we jump into the world of Korra, we're not going in completely blind. We already have an idea of what's expected of the world. We know the rules, and we know the expectations. When Korra's fighting the Triad in episode 1, we understand why the bystanders are so shocked to see someone bending more than one element. It's something that they have never seen before, and it's a feat that only one person in the world is able to do. When someone is seen breaking the established rules without an explanation, this causes a type of disconnect from the story. One example of that disconnect is how lightning bending is handled in Korra, and opposed to what we learn about it from The Last Airbender. In the original series, lightning bending was a skill used by the elite of the elites. When Uncle Iroh, one of the wisest and most powerful characters in the series, decided to teach Zuko how to redirect lightning so he could defend himself against Azula, Zuko declared he was ready to try this technique for real and asked if Uncle Iroh would hurl some lightning his way. The horrified Iroh exclaimed of course he wouldn't do such a thing, as he didn't want to risk killing him, implying that lightning bending is such a dangerous technique that even when controlled by a grandmaster in a training setting with someone who has been properly trained at how to defend against it, it is so dangerous that it wouldn't even be advised to use.
Great! I'm ready to try with real lightning.
What, are you crazy? Lightning is very dangerous.
But I'm not going to shoot lightning at you.
If you're lucky, you will never have to use this technique at all.
So in this later series, when we see Mako casually tasing people with the same lightning technique without any explanation, it seems a bit off. And this is where we see that disconnect. In one series, lightning bending is some super ultimate dangerous technique only reserved for the most dangerous enemies, while the next series, it's used as a basic technique to take down common criminals. But let's stay on topic. The only reason I brought that up is just a brief example of how it's very common to compare a series with a sequel. Those things are considered normal. And on that note, we can talk about Naruto. Naruto the character. So Naruto has become one of the most iconic anime characters in existence. We've all seen his story, we all know his journey. Actually, the very typical shonen hero story. A kid who didn't have much going for him, who became the world's strongest, right? So in Naruto's journey, we see him as he struggles, as he's an orphan. We see him not having that much talent and being ostracized by everyone. But eventually, as we follow the story, that we see that he becomes somebody to be respected, somebody who's very powerful, somebody to be relied upon. Since we've gone through the journey with Naruto, we've come to know him, we've come to love him and respect him. The truth is, we like Naruto. So without getting too deep in what makes a character good, let's talk about some of the things that make a character bad. Enter Boruto. Now, one of the first things that we learn about Boruto is that he doesn't like Naruto very much. Now, I'm using this term loosely, I know that there's actually some love there. However, Boruto doesn't respect Naruto. He disregards him, he discredits him, and then oftentimes he'll even get annoyed at people who stick up for him. And oftentimes that's a good way to put people at odds with that character. It's the same reason why you might instantly have a disliking of someone who insults one of your friends or family members. That person doesn't mean much to you, but you do know your friend or family. So for that person to insult somebody that has already earned your respect, you're wondering where do they get off saying something like that. Now, as far as writing a character, this can still be used if done properly. However, it does put a time limit on said character to be able to plead their case. Why do they not like the character that we like? Is there something about that character that we don't know? There are different sides to the character that this one has seen that we have not. I will say to its credit, this is one area where the movie did a decent job about trying to show us a different perspective. There is the famous scene where Naruto skips Himawari's birthday, and it turns out that it is actually a shadow clone in his place. After he drops the cake, Himawari's birthday is ruined, and it seems like a clear sign that Naruto prefers to work rather than spend time with his family. Although this type of behavior isn't like the Naruto that we know and love, the truth is there has been quite a bit of time that passed since the Naruto that we knew and the Naruto that we're seeing. It's quite possible that the Naruto that we know and love has long since passed. Perhaps this new workaholic Naruto has decided that he'd rather do work and protect the village than spend time with his family. We have to wonder if this is going to be a new arc for this character as he begins to try and reconcile with his family and his son, and many other implications that come from that scene. However, like I said, we are focused on the anime. In the anime, we really don't get that feeling of Naruto being a neglectful dad. The reason being is we see plenty of scenes where Naruto is tracking down Boruto, trying to talk to him, scolding him, pressing on his chores, on his schoolwork, on listening to his mom about taking care of his little sister, and all manners of interactions that you'd expect from a doting parent. Boruto even has pretty casual access to the Hokage's office. Even though he's sometimes scolded for being in there, the truth is the fact that he got in there in the first place is a statement. Regardless of these interactions, however, we still continue to hear Boruto whine and complain that Naruto doesn't have time for him and he's never around. The biggest things that I constantly see in the anime are the pictures all over Naruto's house, depicting him playing and having fun with his family, which makes it extremely difficult to believe that what Boruto is feeling is legitimate. Now, we do have to acknowledge that Boruto is a 12-year-old kid, so it's quite possible he just doesn't understand the responsibilities that have come up on Naruto's shoulder as of becoming the Hokage. However, since we as the viewers do understand that, it puts us as the viewer at odds with Boruto, the main character. Boruto constantly complains about his father, denying him, expressing dislike and disrespect and neglect, and we're just supposed to take his word for it. While on the other hand, there's a plethora of evidence that shows that that's just not true. The actions that we're witnessing are closer in line to the character that we already know and love, the Naruto from that we've watched grow up. Therefore, it's harder to take the side of this new character who's yet to prove themselves to us. Long and short to say, Boruto the character would have a lot more likability if he wasn't at odds with the character that we already like. Right from the jump, they're pretty much asking you to choose sides. And let's be honest, who wants to pick the side of a whiny little kid? Especially when the other side is the grown hero that we've known to love. But at the end of the day, that's just one character trait. And speaking of, the characters in Boruto are a problem. Now, this is something that's seen across the board, but we can start with an example of one of the characters that we already know. let's have a look at Hinata. So this is Hinata from Naruto Shippuden, and this is Hinata from Boruto. Now I want you to look very carefully at these pictures and see if you can notice a difference. Keep looking. In fact, you might want to pause the video to give yourself more time. Now, if you think you're figuring it out, go ahead and pause the video, head to the comment section, write it in. Give everybody enough time to see if they can point out the difference. Alright, you think you got it? Are you sure? Okay, here we go. So those of you with a keen eye, by studying these two pictures, you can see that they've robbed Hinata of her lovely personality. This is not the same driven, shy, determined Hinata that we know from the previous series. And though it is expected that things would change over time, it should be replaced with something. But in Boruto, the Hinata we get is basically a shell of herself. She pretty much goes into the category of generic anime mom. Most of the time she's really nice and sweet, but don't get her angry or then she's mad. Most of the characters that we know from Naruto that transferred into Boruto are suffering from the same fate. They're basically shells of their former self. Now, as tragic as something like this is, it honestly doesn't have to be the worst thing in the world. It's not uncommon for animators to kind of dull down the dynamic personalities in order to pave the way for a new generation. We can downplay the people that we used to know and love to make way for a wave of new characters. The problem with Boruto is the new characters are shells of the old characters. Honestly, when you look at the new roster for the Boruto character, it's a travesty of lack of creativity, low motivation, and very, very little originality at all. It's a basic copy, cut, and paste of the characters that we used to love, except not as good. It seems lazy, inorganic, and hardly makes for interesting storytelling at all. A common argument that Boruto fans will give is that the reason that Boruto isn't quite as interesting as Naruto is because Boruto's era is in peacetime, as opposed to Naruto when they were at war. But honestly, I find that a very shallow and short-sighted argument. The point isn't that Boruto and his friends are in peacetime. The issue is that nobody would really care if they were in war in the first place. You see, just about any situation can be interesting if you care about the people that are involved. A story about somebody getting ready for a soccer tryout might sound pretty mundane, but when that person turned out to be your little brother, suddenly you have stakes in it. That's what makes the story interesting. You now have an investment in the story because you want your brother to succeed. Let's go back to Hinata for another example. In the movie Naruto the Last, there's an extensive scene where Hinata is trying to confess her love to Naruto. We see her going back and forth as her internal conflict comes outward as her determination battles fiercely against her shyness. We see her running back and forth continuously as two of her biggest personality traits fight each other. This was one of my favorite scenes in the movie. There was no life or death involved, it wasn't super high stakes. But Hinata the character is fun to watch. And ultimately that's what's going to play the bigger role on whether a scene is interesting or not. Your investment and connection with the character. Whether Hinata is fighting for her life or struggling to make the perfect meal, we're invested in Hinata because we're invested in the character. Okay, let's jump back to our Boruto cast. We have Boruto himself, Shikadai, Inojin, Chocho, Sarada. These characters seem extremely lackluster. Everything from their names to their design seem uncreative. You don't have to look very hard or far to see that they're just chop-shopped versions of their appearance. Their personality is summed up by one or two quirks that they get directly from their parents. Their names are extremely uncreative as well as their design. And all this makes for a boring character because honestly they seem extremely unauthentic. Look at the fact that they were all born basically at the same year. It seems to not even take into account when their parents met or started dating. They seem less like organic breathing characters and more like plot devices. Boruto needed friends and classmates, so they dreamed up a couple of people to fill that role. Besides looking like the characters that we already know, there's really not much they have going for them. And it's no wonder that nobody really has that much of an attachment to them. because there's not much to attach to. I truly believe that the characters are one of the biggest flaws in Boruto, but honestly, I could do an entire video about that. So let's move on to our next topic. This one kind of involves disregarding things that we already know, at the same time missing big opportunities that really could have paid off in the continuation of the series. Let's talk about Naruto's inauguration as Hokage. Like I said before, Naruto has become one of the most iconic figures in anime. You don't have to watch Naruto to know who Naruto is, and I would even go as far as to say you don't have to have watched Naruto to know his goal of becoming Hokage. Now, in anime, and especially prevalent in shonen anime, it's not uncommon for the protagonist to have a huge, unobtainable goal or dream. Just to name a few, maybe Ash being a Pokemon master, or Luffy being king of the pirates, or Asta trying to be Wizard King. Naruto's dream to be Hokage is definitely up there with some of the greats, and as far as the recording of this video, he's the only one who actually was able to obtain that goal. After over 10 years, almost 1,000 episodes, and more than 11 movies, he finally was able to become Hokage. This should have been a big deal in anime history. Having one of the protagonists actually be able to achieve one of these goals, and to do so in such an organic way. We watched Naruto grow up and strive and get stronger through trial and error. We've seen him mature and overcome adversity. And he was able to attain his goal not because the plot demanded that he should, but as a character, it was something that he was able to obtain. This is something that truly feels earned. Not just for Naruto the character, but even us as the viewers for following along with the story as long as we have. Whether it was with our attention, our finances, or just actually yelling at the TV, we have been cheering for Naruto for quite some time, and hoping that he would be able to achieve his goal. Some of us have been following the exploits of Naruto since we were kids ourselves. Isn't this something that should be cheered and celebrated to see our boy grow up and become the person that he's always hoped that he could be? You'd imagine an event like this would be a setup for one of the biggest payoffs in anime history. Obviously, I'm bringing this up because what we got was not that. But before we go ahead of ourselves, imagine this. On the day that Naruto is sworn in as Hokage, what if Naruto walks onto the balcony, confident, but still surreal, like he can't believe that he has made it here after all this time? What if he begins his speech about his childhood, and it always being his dream to be able to stand where he is today? What if he talked about how much he looked up to the third Hokage, and even linked in his late father, and how they shared the same dream, even if it was previously unbeknownst to him? What if he talks about the loneliness and isolation that he felt as a child, and wanting desperately to fill that void? Maybe he talks about how, as a child, he wanted to be Hokage, but he didn't really know what it meant. What if he brought up how hard he worked because he thought it was a goal that he could only achieve on his own? What if he talks about all the people who believed in him, encouraged him, and spurred him to keep improving? What if he confessed that even though he went on and on about becoming Hokage one day, the past Naruto was not worthy of the Hokage jacket? What if he starts mentioning all the people whose support and sacrifice allowed him to be able to stand here today? What if he gets emotional at this point, and gets choked up as the village goes completely silent, some also holding back tears? What if Kakashi, his teacher, mentor, and now predecessor, puts an affirming hand on his shoulder, a symbol and a callback of how he's always been there to support Naruto during some of his toughest times, and still intends to fill that role? What if Naruto, finding new courage, clears his throat and continues on, now talking about the unbreakable will of fire? What if he says something to the effects of passing on the torch to the next generation, as we get a clip of Boruto and some of his future classmates? What if he concludes with a vision of unity and continued peace and prosperity for the village for many generations to come? What if he sticks the landing on the speech to thunderous applause, cheers, and even tears? As we get a painting look at the ecstatic crowd, we come back to one more still of a smiling Naruto. He did it. Our boy's all grown up, and now it's time to pass the dreaming to the next generation, so they can have their time in the sun as well.
Amazing, he really did it.
Sure did.
Doesn't that sound like a great way to pass the torch? But here's what we get instead. You better get a move on, Naruto, or you're gonna be late for your own inauguration. What's this? Your kids are fighting about something petty? Well, I'm sure that's not gonna be a big deal that's gonna lead to some serious, irrevocable consequences. Oh no, Himawari's mad. But it's okay, she's just a little girl. What's this? She's gonna land a 1 in 10 billion lucky shot against Naruto? Now using a technique that we've never heard of and is not completely made up, she's completely paralyzed Naruto for at least a day and possibly more? But what are we gonna do? Naruto's supposed to be sworn in a few minutes. Well, it's okay. I'm Konohamaru and I'll just use my transformation jutsu to impersonate Naruto. That way nobody will find out. Hooray! Problem solved! I watched this and I wondered, am I supposed to be laughing? Like, is this supposed to be funny? Is this what passes for humor these days? You see things like this, see some just complete ridiculousness, and then you wonder, why? They really just threw away more than 2 decades of Naruto's hard work for a cheap laugh that honestly wasn't even funny. And it's this type of writing that makes me sometimes wonder if the writers of Boruto have even watched Naruto at all. Why would they think that this is something that we wouldn't want to see, or we wouldn't want to see our boy win, see his hard work pay off? Instead, we get random antics from characters that we don't know about and ultimately devalue everything that Naruto has worked for. It kind of reminds me of that one scene in the new Devil May Cry, and I say new even though it's not new, but the one where they changed the design of Dante. They use a character and a version of Dante that we don't really like or don't really know at least, and obviously we're going to like the original Dante better. Of course, we only picked up the Devil May Cry title because we were fans of the original. It's bad enough that we don't get to see the person that we like, but when that scene, he went out of his way to insult the character that we already obviously like, otherwise we wouldn't be here in the first place. With those kind of attitudes, you wonder what gives this person the audacity to defame the character that we already like. And this, unfortunately, is an ongoing theme in Boruto. They use the things that have already been established, the things that we've already known, love, and come to expect, and then they treat it like it doesn't matter. Which is made all the worse when the replacement seems so far inferior. Now, with all that said, I actually don't hate the idea of a continuation of Naruto. With the direction that they went concluding Shippuden, introducing the idea that there are more beings like Kaguya out there, and confirming this idea in the last. There's definitely room to expand on the story. I just believe it was so poorly done, but to close out this video, I just want to talk about a few things they could have done to make it better. And just a reminder, these will be broad strokes, and I'll save the in-depth analysis for another video. One, they could push further into the future. They could have followed the same thing that Korra did. Move far into the future after the protagonist has already passed away. One of Boruto's big flaws is its over-reliance on Naruto and the past cast. Boruto is supposed to be the main character, but who can really be interested in him when the far more interesting Naruto is standing right there? But like I said before, it's not just the dynamic between Naruto and Boruto. All the new cast of Boruto are just less interesting versions of their parents, who still show up constantly, reminding us of better days. It's like the anime itself is afraid to let go. They wouldn't even let Inoki die in peace, and they had to drag him into this whole mess. I really feel like it would be beneficial to pick up the story a few generations removed from Naruto, perhaps focusing on Naruto's great-grandson. Maybe then we might be able to get some interesting characters. Another issue they really should have done is getting rid of Naruto or Sasuke. Now, here's the thing. Naruto and Sasuke are final boss level characters. They should only be fighting once or twice through the whole series, and maybe once as a tag team near the series finale. The way they just casually throw them out every other day is pretty dumb. In addition to getting old, it's honestly pretty disrespectful. Naruto and Sasuke are no longer the main characters, and therefore they're not allowed to solve the majority of the problems. But here's the truth. The Naruto and Sasuke we saw in the last are capable of solving all the world's problems on their own, without any help from anyone. If you don't believe the Naruto and Sasuke are nerfed in Boruto, then I demand you pass Reaper whatever it is you are smoking, because that's some good, just a very short scale. Madara and Hashirama were truly peerless. No ninja before or up to the last arc of Shippuden had ever even gotten close to their level. Naruto and Sasuke surpassed this power multiple times over by the end of Shippuden, then got even stronger by the last, then supposedly got even stronger in Boruto. Now, when I'm making this point, I'm not even saying it's impossible to have characters that are even stronger than that, like evil alien hybrid things. But comparatively, we need to recognize the gap so we don't see the same silliness that we see in Boruto fights. Any fights that involve Naruto and Sasuke fighting seriously disqualifies everyone else in the Naruto world from helping. From what we have seen, there is no reason for us to believe that any of the other Kage should be able to make a difference in a fight on that scale. Remember, an arguably stronger group of Kage were completely dismantled, quite literally, by a significantly weaker version of the Madara that Naruto and Sasuke surpassed many times over. If Naruto and Sasuke are fighting, then the Kage should be on evacuation duty, making sure that there's no one within a 2 or maybe 300-mile radius that can get caught in the crossfire. Needless to say, this is no place for a child who couldn't even pass the tuning exam. Yet, for whatever reason, Boruto and his friends end up playing a key role in the god-tier battles, when in all honesty, they shouldn't even be able to register what's actually going on in the fight, let alone contributing. Another thing they could do is get more creative with their nerfs. Everybody knows the only reason Sasuke really lost his eye is because it was too powerful. And they were tired of the fans asking why Sasuke was only using 1/5 of its power. Doing nerfs is okay, but you have to make it make sense, or it's just going to end up being another one of those things that create lack of continuity. Instead of giving some BS reason about why Sasuke couldn't dodge Boruto, they could have maybe just had Sasuke get captured when he was exploring one of the Atsuki ruins. Or maybe he went missing on one of the missions and therefore spent a season or two absent before we pick back up with him later on and find out where he's been. Giving Naruto the chakra sickness disease was actually a pretty good move, but they probably should have went ahead and continued with that. It really doesn't matter the reason as long as the former heroes have a reason to not be the center of the story. If Naruto can't fight properly, then it's going to make sense that he'll have to rely on somebody's strength. If Sasuke is missing, then it makes sense that nobody's going to expect him to come and save the day. And of course, there's ways that they could use creative writing to create some of these nerfs. We don't have many Jinchuriki that have lived long into adulthood, so we could come up with some condition that Naruto has that prevents him from using his full potential. By creating new circumstances that we've never dealt with, we have the ability to create new rules to help our situation. Or on that same branch of thought, we can have Naruto pass on the Yin's half of Kurama's chakra to Boruto, much like his father entrusted him with that power. There has to be some way to balance the power in a way that 12 and 13-year-old kids aren't competing on the same level with the world heroes. And of course, these are things that should be addressed before the first issue of Boruto ever left for printing. But in conclusion, these are some of the major things that I think are wrong with Boruto, as well as some things that they could have done to make it better. Now, obviously, at this point it's too late. I have no hope of Boruto ever getting good, but I do still hold out hope, like some of you do, that this is all some dream induced by infinite Tsukuyomi. Of course, at the end of the day, this is just my opinion. So what do you all think? Did I get it right? Did I miss the mark? Well, that's what the comment section is for. So, if any comments, then jump down in the comment section and let's talk about it. All I ask is that you be cool about it. There's a ways that we can respectfully disagree. But that's about all I got for you guys today. My name is D Reaper and I'm a YouTuber for fun. Bye for now, and I'll see you guys in the next one.